In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how you can use Excel to help answer some basic epidemiological questions. In epidemiology, you will learn some more advanced tools that are really expensive and really help you determine statistical significances and identify causal factors, things like that. But a lot of times you have a simple question that you need to answer with Excel. And one of your best friends in Excel is a pivot table. So I'm going to show you in this tutorial how you can take data such as what we've got here and view summaries of the data. For example, if we have the question of on age, just frequencies for this age. If you go to the bottom, there are around 150 different people indicated in this data, and they all have different ages. So if we want to see how many times, how many different people in this data have the age of 29, we can do that, and it's relatively easy. So what you do is you select the data. So I'm going to, in this tutorial, I'm going to assume that you don't have a lot of Excel knowledge, so you may see me taking some long steps to do things, but I'm doing that really to help you understand. So to select this data, I go up to the top corner of the data, and you do want the headers. So in row 3, we have the headers that indicate what each of the data points is. So I'm going to select A3, and I'm going to scroll to the very bottom and select the other corner. So I'm holding down Shift. So I selected A3, and then I'm going to hold down Shift now and click in I-153, and that has selected all the data. So again, in A3, I simply click that field, and then I come down to the far right bottom. I press down and hold Shift and click again. That will select all of the data. And now what I want to do is come up here to the Insert tab. I'm going to insert a pivot table. So I click on Pivot Table, and that will bring up a prompt that allows you to specify some different elements for your pivot table. So the first section is choosing the data. Because we already had it selected, you can see the range here saying on sheet 1, A3 through I-153. That's already accurate because we had it selected. If you wanted to, you could change this data. You could use external data sources. It's a lot more complicated, so we're just going to review this single one. As long as you have your data selected before you hit Insert Pivot Table, it will put it all here for you, and you're done with that step. The next section asks you where you want to put this pivot table or the summary of data. You can say in an existing worksheet, and you could click on the location and then click somewhere in this sheet, and it will dump that summary in the same sheet. I recommend usually just putting it in a new worksheet. So that's what we're going to do. And what it will do is it will create a new tab. It will name it Sheet 4, and it will put your summary in that tab. So I'm going to click OK. You'll note that I didn't make any changes. I just left this value the same and this the same. Then I click OK. So now you'll see something that might look a little bit scary. A whole bunch of fields in blue, and it says drop values here and drop values here. It's not really that bad. If you look over here in the sidebar that will pop up, if you're on a Mac, it won't look quite the same. If you're on a Mac, it will pop up as a modal. So instead of the pivot table fields section being docked in the program, it will open a new tiny little window that you'll do the same things from. Let's say we want to look at age, the frequencies of age. You click age and you drag it down to rows. So it will put each new age value on its own row. Okay, and then we can look here and see that sure enough, the youngest age is 23, and it put all of the different age values on this row up to age 63. You'll notice right here it skipped 30. There's no age 30. If you go back to the original data values, there is no one with the age of 30 in those data values, so it didn't put them in. So it's just grabbing every unique value for age, and it has put it in this row, into its own row. Because we want to look at frequencies, I'm going to click age and drag it over to values. And when you first do this, you'll be a little bit shocked. You'll say, well, it says there's 138 people that are age 23. That's not right. There were only around 150 people in the whole data set itself. It's because it's looking at the sum of age. So it is taken, if you divide 138 by 23, let's do this real quick. 138 divided by 23, it will be an even number, 6. So there are 6 people with the age of 23, and it's adding up all of their ages. It's finding the sum. Of course, that's not what you want because you're looking at a frequency value. So you come over here and click on the little down caret thing, the little down arrow, and then select Value Field Settings. And then you want to change the value field summary to a count and click OK. So now it's showing you the actual frequencies. There's only one person with the age of 25. There are 8 people with the age of 24. That's a really quick primer on pivot tables. There's a lot more functionality. This is literally probably 10% of the iceberg, what I've shown you. So you'll notice I've clicked out here and that pivot table panel is gone. If you want to bring that back so you can make more edits, just click on any of this data and it will come back. You could sort by column. So if we wanted to, let's say we want to look at how many people were age 23 by gender. You can click gender and drag that into columns, and it will show female and male and your grand total. So again, we have 6 people that are age 23. 3 of them are male, 3 of them are female. So this helps you quickly spot trends. It helps you summarize the data and make some evaluations. And then if you wanted to, you could even calculate the percentage of frequency. What percentage of all these people are age 23? Okay, the best way to do that, because pivot tables can change and they're fluid, doing formulas based right on the pivot tables can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So a basic calculation would normally work. But what I like to do once I've got my pivot table set up is I will just select the data. So I'm selecting it all. I'm going to do Control C to copy, or if you're on a Mac, Command C. Then I'm going to come here and I'm going to right click, and it should bring up paste options. If you're on a Mac, it may look a little bit different. You can always click Paste Special and it will bring up the dialog, and then paste values. You only want to paste the values. If you paste otherwise, it may grab some dynamic fields from the pivot table and kind of mess it up. So I'm pasting just the values here. And now you can do your math on these values. So we want to see what percentage of everyone the age 23 bucket is. So I'm going to do equals. So there's a couple ways we can do this. Starting with the most simple, but not the most flexible. I'm going to come down here and see that there are 150 individuals. So you could come here and say equals 6, the number of people that are 23, divided by 150. And that will give you 4%. So 4% of all the 150 people have the age of 23. Getting a little more advanced. So that's not a very flexible way of doing it, because we want to see what it is for each of these age tiers. And if you click to drag it down, it's just grabbing the same math every time. So instead, we want to actually grab the values out of these cells so that we can do this really quick. So I'm going to say equals 6, or I5, the value in that cell, divided by 150. Okay, so this will work this way, is 4%. And now I think it will work when you have it selected. If you hover over the bottom right corner of the cell, it should turn to a little plus sign, like what I've got here. If you double click on that, it will create the values all the way down for all of these fields. And if you look into it, you'll see, yes, I6, this field here divided by 150. So that's beneficial. Another way that you could have done this, and this is the way that I would generally recommend you do it, it's a little bit more complex. But instead of doing 150, so we're going to delete those. Instead of hard coding in the 150, we're going to reference the actual cell. So we have got, let's start over again, we've got equals, we've selected the 6 divided by, scroll down and then click 150. And if you scroll back up, you'll see that it's in there. I'm going to hit enter. I'm going to do the same thing and double click. This time it's going to create a problem, and you'll see what that is in just a second. So it's saying div 0, it just means there's an error. You'll notice the first one is referencing I43. That's where we have the value of 150. The next one has successfully grabbed the I6, but it thinks that we've also moved down. It's trying to grab I44, which is right here. There's nothing in that value, so anything divided by 0 is creating an error. So the way you fix that is when you're setting this up, if you put a $sign in front of the letter and in front of the number, it will actually lock that value in. So when we double click to copy and paste all of the values down, it is going to only change the blue value, that I5. Okay, so it will change it to I6 and then I7 and then I8, etc. This red value that's referencing the 150 number at the bottom, I've locked it, so it's not going to change. You lock it by putting a $sign in front of both the letter and the number. There's a couple more advanced Excel techniques in where you can put these dollars. I'm not going to go over that right now, but you just put in I43 and then hit enter. And this time when you select the field and hover over the bottom right, you have the plus that comes up. Double click that, and now if you look down, they all have that $sign I43 because it's locked in. And now you have your values. You can come down and select them all, and you can change it to a %, and let's get a couple more decimals in there. And now you have the frequencies for each of these age ranges. Pivot tables are very powerful tools. The nice thing about a pivot table is it's not actually changing your data, it's only referencing it. So all of your data on sheet 1 is going to stay the same. It's not changing any of this. So you can click around and have fun, if you consider this fun, but you can click around, drag different items into the columns, different items into the rows, change the values. You can even apply filters. So let's say we only wanted to look at, filters are a little bit tricky and they don't always work as you'd expect them to. But let's say we put a filter on here and then we only want to look at 23 and 24. So it's only going to return the data for values 23 and 24 in here. So you can play with this. It's not going to hurt your original data. Feel free to play with it, and I hope this helps. Thanks.